Good evening and welcome to the New Orleans TV Internet Work System. We've got a lot of changes going on in tonight's broadcast. First, as you may or may not notice, we did not have our 5 minute countdown. That's just one of those things. We were running a little late. We apologize, even though that really just gives you time to come on, the audience, that is. Tonight, we will be doing there's been a last minute change in programming, not from our co host, he'll be on momentarily, but topics. Usually, as you know, our co host specializes in bankruptcy and also traffic courts, and we've done a show so far on traffic courts, and we were kind of scheduled to do bankruptcy this week, but we'll wait till next week. And I'll fill in usually with things on health insurance, Medicare, etc. But tonight's going to be, for the most part, me talking, even though Derek will be there and interjecting when he can, so it won't get too morbid. But it's going to be a long show on my journey right now. Usually I don't give out personal information, but I think the end result, if it reaches you and you should become in the situation I am, it might have a significant educational and also helpful opportunity. Let's go ahead and welcome Derek Ross. Derek, good evening. How are you?
Hey, good evening, Bob. How's it going?
Okay. Could be better, but okay.
Right. Well,
Before we get into, it could be hopefully it's not going to be boring for the audience, but before we get into my monologue or diatribe, is there anything you want to say in particular?
good evening to you. Good evening
Okay.
to the viewers.
All
Uh,
right.
just one housekeeping issue. I like to keep myself in good favor and in line with the Bar Association. So I just want to make sure people understand that I'm not a specialist in those areas,
Oh, okay.
but I do a lot of work in those areas.
Okay. All right. That's a wonderful disclaimer. Do we need to put that on a little sign from now on, or what? Yeah, that
No, no,
you're
it's recorded. It's
just,
recorded.
uh,
So
just, uh,
we're
just
good.
Just teasing as usual. Well, folks, as you know, we're live and we're on multiple platforms. We're on my Facebook, Bob Bockelman. We're also on Derek Russ's Facebook profile. So if you follow him, you only have to log in there. You can also go on one of my other two Facebooks, the New Orleans TV Network System or the New Deal, the former dining club. In addition to that, we have two. We have a LinkedIn, which is under R or R Revue. We have a Twitter, which is either I think it's Bockelman Bob. It's spelling the back last name first for whatever reason. So you can get to us anywhere there. In addition, you can make any comments as you like. We will see those here on the screen. We may or may not post them, but we will certainly address them and either answer any questions. So even though this topic is going to be self-centered tonight, if you have something you'd like to either tell us or even if it's not relevant to what I'm talking about, please make said comment, okay? That is not disruptive, so don't stay away from it. And even more so, we got our first caller. We had to work out all the technicalities of having a third party phone. And so we would love for someone to give us a call. As you see, we keep the number up the whole show 504. Don't forget, you got to put 504 383 3654. Give us a holler just to say hello. I just say, well, Bob, quit talking because you're boring us. Okay, whatever you want to do. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and start my narrative and let's see how this goes. First thing I wanted to tell you is that I am. I've got a title and I'm a statistic. Okay. Let's see. What does that mean? What does that mean, Bob? A title. And usually, the people that titles are the lords and the ladies of the land, and you're certainly not either one of those. My title is the word breakthrough. Okay. Wow. I mean, we're impressed. I know. I know. Breakthrough is usually a very positive term where someone, reaches some standard high level and goes even further, or is the first one through that barrier to establish perhaps a new bar or standard for everyone. So breakthrough usually sounds like, hey, that's good, Bob. I mean, you shouldn't be bragging on it. You're not supposed to be self-praised. But in this regard, it's a negative. Okay, what is a negative breakthrough? And that goes to the next part about being a statistic. I have now been diagnosed with COVID. Now, well, Bob, you should have paid attention. You should have worn a mask. You should have done vaccine. Okay. Breakthrough means that I've done the things that we're supposed to do. I have been vaccinated. In fact, I can give you the dates. I have been vaccinated with the Pfizer way back in the beginning of February of last year. Followed up 2 weeks later with the second injection of Pfizer. Followed up the very first, and I don't remember the week, but the very first week of boostering, I've been boosted. I wear a mask when it's out in public, and I'm home most of the day by myself because I am a retiree, which obviously I looked the part. So, all right, Bob, you said enough. The show's over. Well, it would be, and maybe that's going to be my situation. Hopefully not. But what I want to do is not so much go back and bore you with the chronology, which I've just given you in less than a minute or so, of what has transpired where I thought I was doing the right thing, being old, being fat, having diabetes, having other conditions that make me the prime candidate for dropping off, way beyond my shelf life. Okay. So I've done all that with the hopes that I can avoid this situation, which um, unfortunately I haven't. So I started right before Christmas, maybe the Thursday before Christmas on a weekend, if my old mind remembers me. I started with a sore throat. Oh, Bob, right away. No, I get sore throat every time the weather changes from cold to hot on a short period of time. And we were just going through those roller coasters like we're going through now. Excuse me. Yeah, you had a cough. So I keep antibiotics that I've been using for years, and sometimes in 3 days that's totally cleared up. This time I stayed on the antibiotics for 7 days because I had a cough, I had a sore throat, I had some headaches, not all the time, but some headaches usually at night when I was trying to go to sleep, and fatigue. I was tired, but obviously when I take antibiotics, that tires me out as well because you're not feeling your normal. All right, so that went on 7 to 8 days during after Christmas, and I have to admit I went to Christmas dinner, okay, a Christmas lunch, excuse me. Just a very small group of us, just three of us at the Windsor Court. Not bragging here, but it was a lovely meal. Then on New Year's Eve, we went myself and Lynn, our partner here, um, to a very small restaurant, Cafe Min, where they didn't. When we went in there, we waited late. We made a late reservation of 9. There were only two other in the whole restaurant at that time. Most people went early because they were going out to party if they went at all. So it was very quiet. The rest of the time we stayed home. But sure enough, it continued. The coughing, sometimes at night, would be just deplorable. During the day, I was on, like I said, I stopped the antibiotics, but now I was taking cough syrup like one every at least 8 hours, if not 4 hours. I was taking cough lozenges, and they seem to help a lot with the throat. Um, I didn't take anything for the headache. I bore with it through the day. At nighttime, if I had trouble trying to go to sleep because it was so strong, I would take 2 acetaminophen. I know I'm giving away brands, but they were told that that is the best thing for that kind of pain. So that way I'd get through the night. In the morning, miraculously, I'd feel better. Okay, but I guess it was just because I got the rest and I didn't have the coughing and all or whatever. But no sooner had I get up in the morning, within an hour or two, all of the symptoms would return. The weakness right away. We've got somebody coming all the way from Ting Mish. Welcome, welcome. And I've forgotten if Ting is in. It's got to remind us what country he's from. Is it Ting? Tell us where you're from again. I got it mixed up, but I'm so glad we got somebody from across the continent watching. Anyway, of all nights, he wants to hear the story. Anyway, so what I was telling you about has been my saga. And of course, so Sunday, we had heard that, we heard all these nightmares. I never did go get, during that time, I might have mentioned, lest I forgot, early on, I took a at home test. Okay, Len and I both took the home test of swabs in the nose, and they came back clear. So I was feeling pretty good because I mean, not feeling good, but I was glad to see that receptivity of negative. But anyway, when it continued going on, I was getting more and more concerned. And unfortunately, I don't have the wherewithal during the day because of not being able to drive because of visual impairments to go to any of these drive throughs. Plus, we were seeing these nightmares, which all of us have seen on the TV, of hours upon hours of waiting, whether it's for a test or for injections, you know? So, what I did discover through a lot of commentary, that the UNO Lakefront Arena, which is much known for the papal visit as well as the concerts, also was a station open not all the time, but they were really having the fewest amount of people. Um, and of course, they only stayed open to 12 o'clock on the weekend. So Sunday, I think it was, we went because it was rainy, kind of cold. And I said, hopefully that's going to work to our favor. We got there at 11 o'clock, got there a quarter to 11, and there were like 10 cars ahead of us in the gate part. Before you go into this thing, there's a gate watch, or a gatekeeper who counts the cars, etc., lets them in packets of 10.
Hmm.
So looking down where the tents, there are two tents established on two different roads, and each tent has two separate lines of cars where they work both sides simultaneously. And this is done by, I guess, the National Guard. I'm not good at recognizing the military's, camouflage, which one is another, but I'm hoping, I guess it was our National Guard. Anyway, within 15 minutes, we were actually able to get in. So then we were channeled by another traffic director to which line to go to. So we went on the right side, and there were two lanes, and we had, I think, between 5 and 10 left ahead of us. Even though when we looked for a distance, there were like 20 on each. But anyway, to say it was easy, it was very easy. We were home or finished in a half an hour. So that is remarkable. So I highly recommend it. I don't know if it was just the luck of the draw or karma or the Lord with us, but half an hour for that whole process was certainly well worth it. Now, of course, you've got to wait for your results, which aren't, that home test, you get them right away, within minutes of you doing your swab. Here, you've got to wait to come back from a lab. So, sure enough, unfortunately, yesterday morning, early in the morning, my lab sends me the thing telling me that COVID has been detected, excuse me. So I immediately went into depression and whatever that is, but I mean, certainly a funk, um, saying, oh, what, after I've tried all these measures, I thought to the fullest, um, why would I mean, I'm not blaming anyone or anything like that, but I'm just remorseful of how I could get it after going through these procedures and doing them much more timely than anyone else. Never second guessing doing these things. Certainly no politics involved. So that was my all day most of the day yesterday, and I still have residuals of that. However, I was very pleased because my physician, who I had told them what I was going to do, and told them that I had just gotten the results. Excuse me. He initiated a referral, Ochsner, at the main campus, not in the hospital. For those who know the main campus on Jefferson Highway, the hospital basically is on the right and in the center. The left part of the center is the clinic building. Then all the way to the left is a perpendicular building that is called the Brent House Hotel, which is over the years been a hotel, been a recovery place for people who are, like if a family visits from out of town, they can stay there if their loved one is in the hospital for whatever reason. Well, they've taken a downstairs floor across the back and converted to, now I don't know what this definition was. I didn't want to feel like a real idiot, but it's called the EUA Immunotherapy Department. All right, what was I going to have done? I mean, they told me you may or may not have heard the term monoclonal antibodies. Okay, it's a lot. I understand. I don't really understand it in that term. However, I had been realizing that the big deal here is our systems become less resilient to these viruses because, and some people call it immune deficiencies, because our antibodies aren't there or aren't there strong enough or in quantity enough to fight off certain illnesses. And obviously, I got the Omicron, even though it wasn't identified to me as such, because it was something, I hadn't, they're even thinking that, and maybe Omicron, you should have a special, another booster just for it, as opposed to like the other one did help with Delta and the previous ones. Anyway, that's still under speculation right now. However, what they've learned to do and had, according to them, phenomenal success is that they will do an antibody, lab cell created antibody infusion. Oh my goodness. That's scary as hell, isn't it? No, I guess. The scariest part to me is I despise needles. I feel every needle prick now. Only four times I've never felt a needle prick was, you ready for this? The vaccines. I never felt the needle at all. And I would tell the lady, I'm looking away, please let me know when it's finished. And they would say, it's already done. But these needles, infusion, they've got to put a thing and place it so that they can infuse it. If you've ever been in the hospital and you've had like some type of drip for whether it's blood, most common is glucose when you're dehydrated or you haven't had the proper nutrition. Looks clear like water, but it drips through that into your veins, into your system. Well, it's the same process, but you don't go to the hospital. As I say, you go to this unit, and when you come into the unit, you got to bear with me with the coughing. I might have to drink some water too in a sec. Uh, it's one long hall, and all you see, it's a little scary. All you see lounge chairs, and then when I say lounge chairs, recliners. That's the term, recliner. Side by side with spacing every two, running the entire length and back walls. And there was somewhere between 15 and 20 of these, okay? And now I was ahead of my time. I had an appointment at 12:30, and we got there at quarter to 12. They didn't even ask about or check the thing. They immediately said, "Are you ready? Because we have room." I said, "Oh, sure." So they immediately sat me down at a vacant chair. Now I was pleased. I said, "Oh," because the whole process they tell you up front takes a minimum of an hour and a half. Oh my God, an hour and a half being infused? No, the infusion itself takes only 21 minutes, precisely 21 minutes. Okay. When you first go in, after you sit down, then they do the prep work. The prep work is they come and they take your vitals. They ask all your Medicaid, go through the history of yourself. Plus, they do your blood pressure, your fever, your temperature, your pulse, all those oximeters. And I was fine. In fact, they told me, "Oh, your blood pressure, your textbook, 121, I think, over 70." I said, "Oh, thank you." What can I say? Thank you. But anyway, but all of my signs were good, especially for this old codger. All right. So because of that, then they could proceed. So then they have to wait a little more longer for the stuff has to. I forgot the reason, but when they're ready, they start precisely. They tell you, you hear the little beep, and then you can. Some people are going to sleep. They were sitting back and just going to sleep. Even though I love sleep, I was a little concerned. I didn't want to fall asleep and something happened, and I don't know what the hell's going on. So I stayed awake, but 21 minutes is not a long time unless you're just sitting there doing it. Now I have to admit, they were very courteous in the beginning. They said, "Bob, do you need something to drink or a little snack?" I said, "Sure, I can use. What do you have? Water, soft drinks, which I'm not supposed to have, or we have some cranberry juice. So give me the cranberry juice." So I drank that, and that helped a little bit before I started. So went ahead and did it. Meanwhile, and this is the stuff I want to impart, not so much as boring tale, I guess, but some of the things I learned using my reporter and curious, inquisitive type nature. I was the only one asking these poor folk questions. Okay. Everyone else just went in there, did their thing. Now, a few of them you could hear they were expressing anxiety. That part you can understand, but none of them asking questions. Well, old Bob's going to bore the hell. Then I purposely spread them around. I didn't want to ask just one person. The other person would give up and maybe do something wrong to me. But there was a pharmacist there, a young lady. So I've known her before from the pharmacy. She was actually helping. There was the two doc. I mean, there were so many people in there. It was like, and I don't mean the patients. I'm talking about staff that it looked like a beehive. They were going back and forth, flipping the hidden there, clean. As soon as you finish, they clean and sterilize everything. I asked one of the guys who was like the supervising physician. I said, "You need a pedometer, a speed, foot count, step counter." He said, "Boy, I wish I'd have had something," because he said, "I put more steps on when I'm in the ship." I said, "I've never seen you all. I've never seen so many people work so fast. So much so, I'm trying to tell you, they have these portable, which you've probably seen if you've been in a hospital, computers with monitor screens that has all your information and connects online, and they're portable on wheels. They roll it all. So they're rolling around like a dinner cart as they go from one place, from one area to another. They're talking at the same time. They're charged with as soon as they get notification. Like if you get a public thing, they will get notification that you have turned up positive. They will either call your doctor, or in my situation, I had already notified my doctor to get a referral, and then they will bring you in ASAP. She even asked me, "Well, would you want?" I said, "Yes, I want to go through with it." I said, "How long do I have to wait?" She said, "Well, next appointment's at 12:30," and this was like 10:45. I said, "I'll be there." And like I said, I even got there early, and they took me. So that was very efficient. They're working multiple tasking all the time. So we finished my Sorry, pardon this. I know it's uncomfortable, but it was either this or don't do the show, and I couldn't think of anything else right now more important when you hear this. If you really are saddled with this situation, um, so I asked the physicians and the people different questions, as I mentioned, and I asked because another friend of mine, a lady, she's been suffering similar symptoms for quite some time. That she's told, I say, a couple of weeks, whatever. Okay, and she's totally isolated herself. She just has her two animals. She has two dogs, but she hasn't gone anywhere. So she's doing all the right things. Now, you have to say she's a nurse and does not believe in vaccinations, and it's not a political thing at all. She won't even. She's not political. She's not political, but it's the whole idea of whether this should be this kind of medication should be injected into the body. She has I mean, she's a holistic, she does all that stuff. So she makes all these toxins, and I'm not trying to be derogatory to her, but she keeps her body very pure. There we go. So she's just anti-vaccination, not for scientific reasons or medical reasons. Now, I'm not trying to move you the other direction because I'm all pro-vaccination. Okay, so I'm not going to go too much. But what I did was, I said I'm going to ask them because maybe she will appreciate this therapy that she would go get the antibodies infused would help her prevent getting it or fight against it if she's getting it. So I asked the question: if someone has the symptoms but has not been diagnosed, could they apply for this therapy? And they said, absolutely not. You have to be a COVID diagnosis and you have to have a referral from your physician. I said, well, I said, are there any other parameters that I need to know? Like, is there a scale of who would be eligible, even if you had those two things, and who would not? Oh, yes. Another one. Oh, yes. Like, oh, we're so happy somebody's asking the question as opposed to being aggravated. Um, it runs from two. It runs. She said, or he said, I forgot whether it was he or she this time. Said it's between 3 and 4. Now, they didn't do too much explanation of what that number represents, but they did give an overview. Say it's based on things like um, how many symptoms you have and what are those symptoms. How long have you had the symptoms? Of course, whether or not you're vaccinated fully, partially, those kind of questions. So they come up with a numerical rating system. 4 is normally considered the minimal, but they will consider somewhere between 3 and 4 as the minimal to enter this therapy. and I was kind of afraid that I need to know what the maximum is because maybe that's the maximum and I'm going to keel off right after it. So I said, "Is there a maximum?" "Oh yes, yes." I said, "Could I know what that maximum number is?" "Well, the maximum is 9." And I said, "Oh," I kind of lightened up, hoping if I'm only between 3 and 4, and 9 is the top cutoff, I might be okay. And he said, or she said, "You are just on the perimeter to be qualified for this program based on all the information." So I said a little thank you, to whomever that's important to you, and was glad to hear that. But these are the things you won't know about. Now, most people don't care. Most people just are in there to get the thing, get over, bemoan about how long it's taking, or complain, "Oh, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that." You know, I, I didn't see anybody pass out. I didn't see anybody have any kind of situation because they tell you they'll immediately put you, run you through the emergency room if something should happen. They give you those cautions, but nobody had the leaflet. Nobody, they would just complain. "Oh, I didn't know it was going to be an hour and a half." Gee whiz, your day is ruined. Um, Anyway, after you finish the 21 minutes and you'll hear the little beep, everything has alarms now, the little beep on the machine and they come and verify it. Then they say, okay, they unhook the major signs, all the things on your finger for the blood pressure and the blood pressure's here, I mean, for the pulse and the heart rate or whatever. So, and then they say, now you have to go what we call the recovery room. So we walk, which is just back to the original entrance, and then right across the small hall. Then you come in a equally, but even a more narrow room, the same length, with single chairs against the first wall, the left wall, all the way back. Now, when I got there was one young gentleman in the front row, but all the rest of the people were in the back. So I said, "Oh, gee, I wonder where I'm going to be here." Right away, so what she does is she logs you in. She gives you paperwork, one for you to take home to read. The other one has your because she's going to do the same thing that they did over on the other side. Before you leave, they're going to take all your vitals again to see how you've changed, and she records the time up at the top, the time you come in, and then she circles at the bottom the time that you're finished and you leave. That 1 hour to make sure you don't try and say, "Oh, my clock says such and such." It goes at that time. And they got a big clock on the wall. So anyway, the same thing happened. Now, because I'm a diabetic, I'm used to eating early lunch. I don't eat much. Well, I do. I wouldn't carry this belly if I didn't eat much. But, because of this sojourn with diabetes and a lot of the drugs I'm taking, I've cut back substantially. And I've lost weight. Not enough, of course. Never enough. But anyway, make a long story short, she asked me, "Well, Bob, same thing. Bob, do you want something to drink or some snack?" I said, "Yes." I said, it's already, at that time it was like quarter to one, something like that, whatever time I got out of there. And I said, "What do you have in snacks?" And, well, what she said, "Well, we have some goldfish." I said, "Oh, perfect. I eat that at home." And then they gave me another juice or a water or a diet drink. I forgot. So I took that so I would feel better because I knew I was starting to feel a little queasy without eating. And then I had to sit for the hour, of course, like everyone else, one by one. Then they come back to you and they, like I say, just unhook you, write down all the information on their chart. You can ask them again, and this time everything was better. My blood pressure went down low to 90 over 67 or something like that. I was almost near death because there was no blood pressure at all. Anyway, so I did well again. I passed that test. Uh, and so then the big question is, I asked him early on, and something I left out for you. I said two questions. One, what type of successes are you having with this? Because they've been doing this for a little while, and they said we have not had a person or their doctor call back to say that someone has not felt better. Okay. And I can say you're cured because no one knows if you're ever cured at this stage. I mean, we're that still in the early stages, even though we say, "Oh my God, 2 years, 3 years, it's outrageous." Oh, by the way, we have a lovely comment. I'm going to go ahead and show it because I think it's one of the things I asked the serviceman, a very particular question. Was there a charge for the antibody treatment? The answer is no. And I found that out before I booked the appointment. Not only they don't even take your insurance information, she said this is all provided by our government that we can test so much. So this is something we don't, because I was afraid. I have to admit that this was going to be a healthy charge, or I'm with Oshner. Well, Oshner's previous. Now they're going back to their own HMO. I'm with Humana, and I was saying, oh my goodness, why they only going to they're not going to pay this, or the copay is going to be humongous. But that gave me a total relief that I was going to definitely go ahead and have it done. So thank you so much, D servicemen, wherever you're from. You're serving the world by asking that question. Anyone who sees this and can contemplate having this or has been instructed to have this, get that out of your mind so you're a bit more free of a mind going into it. And at least you're not going to be hit with with a charge or a bill before you leave. Pay while you go or something like that. So thank you again. And tell us where you're from, because we appreciate your comment and we appreciate a very relevant question, because I had it, but my old mind forgets these things. All right, let's see where we are in the end of the near the end of the journey, and then Derek's got some things you want to add. I gotta take a quick sip of water. I apologize, folks, but I can't go a long time talking like this without a scratchy throat. Anyway, so as I was saying, I waited to my 1:17 to get up, and then my friend Lynn, who was gracious enough, he got me a coffee, which I'd asked. So he picked me up, met me, took me home, and I went home. And I guess I slept most of the afternoon. I mean, I just reclined. They do tell you, here's one thing you have to hydrate. Water, of course, is always preferred as much as possible. Liquids, eat whatever you can. So then it's not like you have to. And oh, by the way, you don't fast anything before this. All the way going in. Of course, I didn't eat right before I came in, but I didn't have to fast or abstain from anything. Um, and then, of course, they said to rest. That's the key, is rest. And but as I was saying, if I didn't say, I did ask about how successful they were, and they bragged. How one they didn't give me numbers. I didn't want to get them too angry because I was getting to be a pest. I'm sure, since I'm the only one asking questions. But I also was thinking, how can I take this experience, what I'm hopefully doing tonight, and educate other folks, like the person I was talking about, who the young nurse, not young, but the nurse who hasn't been vaccinated but is going through symptoms and won't go get vaccinated and is trying to treat herself. Uh, so I wanted to get as much information that they were willing to give me without getting upset that I'm interrogating them. Okay. So the last question I asked after what kind of success rate is, when or how soon might I start feeling better? Okay. And I was kind of afraid of what this was going to be. And he said, or she said, between 12 and 48 hours. So half a day to 2 days. Okay. So that seemed like nothing to me. I mean, I wasn't upset at all with that, because I've been hanging out with this thing for 3 weeks, 3+ weeks. I certainly could not sleep the whole day. Go not sleep 24, 48 hours, but still, what I'm saying, go through and see what happens. Now, excuse me. 12 o'clock last night, but of course I was sleeping. But I have to admit, I don't remember choking a lot, or it looks like I went to sleep a little easier. I did not have to take my two acetaminophen because I had it on the side of my bed on my little nightstand, and I didn't take them, and I went to sleep. So that was very good. Now, being an old person, it's another thing you got to worry about, which you can't invent, is that you don't sleep 8 hours straight. If I get 8 hours straight, that's wonderful, but it's never straight. It's in periods of minimum of 1 hour, 2 to 3 hours. 3 hours is a wonderful segment to me. 3 hours would be like an 8 hour segment to the normal person. Okay. Because I have to, of course, bodily functions always happens, and it's just a matter of being uncomfortable or something, whatever, and wake me up. So even though I would wake up, I would immediately do what I needed to do and go right back to sleep. So in that respect, it was very good. I woke up, and as I said before, even before this, in the morning, I feel better. I don't have it. All the symptoms don't come immediately as soon as I open my eyes. First one comes is usually a little bit of the weakness or dizziness, and then the others come on later. So I didn't feel, and even when I noticed when I was coughing, the other coughing, and I'm gonna get a little gross here, was huge. I mean, lots of phlegm and sneezing. I went through at least a box and a half of tissues, if not more. And I didn't know. I noticed that I would feel them starting to come up. It would never come out. I don't know if that's good or bad, but to me, it sounded like that maybe it was lessening. So I'm hopeful. I hesitated to do this now. I can't guarantee you, and I'll never be able to guarantee you, I guess, that I'm going to be 100% come, um, what's today? By Thursday night at midnight on Friday morning. But if I can just get some relief from this, I'm going to then. And I had one other question for another one is that, can you tell me how many? I said, is there any test to tell you how many antibodies you have in your system? Because I kind of heard something about this before. And they said, yes, it's a blood test. But obviously, you can't find out how many you had before because you came in right after after the diagnosis. Because you have to get your doctor once again to tell you to go have that blood test. Had I had more time, I would have certainly asked. And I'm toying with the idea of now waiting after Friday and asking my PCP to let me get that blood after the fact to see how many or what kind of quantification they can give me on the antibodies in my system now. And I'm hoping it's a bunch. I don't know. All she would tell me was we're transfusing 150 milliliters into you, which is again one of these. And it wasn't even some of the glucose bags I've had have been real tall things like this over the years. This was almost a square, maybe not even 12 inches, maybe 6 to 8 inches. So it wasn't a lot of liquid. But again, the liquid didn't tell me, the volume of liquid didn't tell me how many antibodies are in that liquid or that fluid. So who knows? But I'm going to try and get more information on that, especially if I can get a lab test, a blood test to identify or quantify what do I have now. And then I've got a lot more questions like I'm not, I'm skeptical that I'm going to be real well. So do I need to do this again? If so, when? Or is there anything else I need to do? Besides the masking and the somewhat quarantining. Because now it's so cockeyed right now with the quarantine. Whether it's 10 days, whether it's 5 days, whether it's 5 days with a take-home test. It's the whole people. They're learning as we go along. Unfortunately, and that's why we have no patience with the experts. But this is something they've never experienced before. Not this particular thing that keeps mutating and going from one thing to another. So let's see how much time. Oh, I did a half an hour. I wanted to do more. But again, I know I'm boring you. If you have any more, before I bring Derek on, and if he's long overdue.
You're doing fine, Bob. You're doing
Oh,
fine.
come on.
You're
You're
teaching me
taking me
something
either way out.
about these
Let
these
the old man
symptoms.
ramble. Let the old man ramble. I don't have to do a dang thing. A dang thing. But again, if any of you have any questions like like deservicemen that really would help, whether you think it helps or not, just please give us a comment or a call at 504-383-3654. I know I don't say that enough, but tonight it's hard for me to think because I'm so trying to focus on what I've been saying to you. But I'm trying to be hopeful. I still got that underlying funk because of just the shock of the news. When you think you're doing right and you found out, well, maybe you didn't, or maybe there was something you missed. Even though I don't know what it is, but it's just my luck or karma or God's will, whatever. And now I got to make the best of it. I just want to try and get the least amount of uncomfortable. The important thing is I do know that because I've talked to some other people, if I wouldn't have had those vaccines, I would have had to go to the hospital, even with that low perimeter. And I didn't want that at all costs because there's too much chance of then the transmission happening with so many other patients in there or going there with varying degrees of it. So I think I've been spared that by going through the vaccines and all, and those were not problematic. So no reset, no consequences, none. They didn't even feel the pinprick, as we say. All right, now Derek He's going to tell us about fortunately, he's young, healthy, no COVID, nothing like that. But he has a personal situation in his family that happened almost at the beginning of the pandemic, right before the pandemic,
Yeah.
that kind of amplifies what I talked about. So that made me feel good talking to him today, not knowing this situation. So go ahead, Derek, take it from there.
Yeah. Well, I think people are getting away from feeling the stigma of being diagnosed with COVID. Um,
I hope you're right because I still have that concern that I'm going to be like the leprosy, cast out. No one's going to want to talk or be around you. Not that I want them close to anything, but the whole idea that oh my God, it's like someone who had AIDS or HIV, years ago, how they carried that stigma for many years until there was actually some treatment. But go ahead.
yeah.
But I
Yes.
agree
So,
that it's so prevalent, especially this Omicron, however you pronounce it, that it's more people got it. It's not like 50% anymore, 30%. It's got to be much higher percentage of people that have it. So go ahead, and I won't interrupt you anymore. I promise.
yeah. Well, I'm glad that you were able to get that. Is it called monoclonal
Well, they say
antibody?
monoclonal, MONO, which means one, chronos, CHRONAL, and chronos is a Greek term.
Hmm.
But it's really lab created. They create it in the lab, so it's not natural. It's not like coming from another person or an animal. They create these antibodies that you have in your body naturally that needs supplementing or replacing if yours is going by the wayside. So go ahead, but it's called
So,
antibody infusion. That's the procedure.
I'm wondering if they are donors uh, that provide the antibodies. Do they get it from people who have suffered with uh,
Well, they
coronavirus?
I'm gonna step in and say, as I just mentioned, they're lab created. So I don't think they're from any donation. Like I say,
Okay.
they have put together the right chemicals or whatever analyzing antibodies and created artificial or non-natural. That's my feeling. I might be totally wrong. You might be right. And I didn't think of that question at that time because I had all these others running through me, and that didn't because I didn't care at that point where it came from.
Gotcha.
Now, second thought, maybe I do, but let's not scare too many people with that contemplation that
Right.
they certainly wouldn't be intentionally infecting anyone with someone who's had, I think, the diagnosis, and
Hmm. Hmm.
anyway. But that's just my conjecture. So you go ahead.
So from the onset of your symptoms, and I believe you said it was somewhere around Christmas, was it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, the Thursday
Thursday
before
before
Christmas,
Christmas.
I started with sore throat. And that's when I went on I waited for a day to see if that was going to persist. And then I went on antibiotics. Of course, I
Hmm.
also was taking in that time cough syrup and lozenges, to help the throat.
Okay.
And right away with the antibiotics, I get relief. The problem is just covering the pain. It's not really relief in this situation. But go ahead.
Yeah, well, this is all new to me. Of course, I'm not a medical physician, so I guess I have
Really?
questions. I have questions
We
myself.
need to put another disclaimer?
Yeah.
Okay.
so, I guess I know the disease, the virus, runs its natural course, and over time, individuals hopefully start feeling better. But from the onset of your symptoms from contracting coronavirus, and from the time that you were able to get the infusion of monoclonal uh, antibodies, how are you feeling? Are you feeling any better? Is there a difference?
Well, that's what I was trying to say. Every morning I feel better for a short period of time, even
Mhm.
before this. Uh, but today, because I had a long conversation with one of my relatives called to check on me, didn't know about this, and oh my goodness, the conversation went on for at least an hour or longer. And I was coughing because I didn't have the water right by me, and it really aggravated and actually was hurting my chest because I was coughing so much at that point.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so like I say, I don't find myself the coughing that I'm doing now, other than this provoked stuff by talking too much,
Mhm.
is not as serious or prolonged. One night, the Sunday, a week after Christmas, I didn't sleep a week, and was a nonstop coughing, bringing a
Mhm.
phlegm constantly. it was the most painful and horrible evening of I think almost of my life. I mean, I have a short memory, so I'm sure I had worse situations, but I didn't know where. I really thought it was the end at that
Mm,
point. You
mm.
know, I thought that this is where it's going, and
Wow.
it's just going to be a matter of time going through this. But I noticed today that my coughing doesn't always result in having to spit up a lot of phlegm or whatever that's called. So that's kind of an improvement. I'm hoping that it's going to go away.
Yeah.
The throat is now only when I'm provoking it, you know. But I'm still continuing with the regimen of cough syrup one every 8 hours and cough lozenges every 4 hours, just as a preventive now to make sure until all pain is going away.
Hmm.
Headaches, I don't have serious headaches today. I'll wait to see tonight. I don't remember having it last night, but they really come on at night when I'm quiet and laying down. So we'll see if that happens.
Yeah.
And
Hopefully.
the fatigue, though, I did notice today. I tried to stand up for a while, do some dishes, clean the day before you put a dish away, and I was really by the end I had to go lay down, and that was only maybe 20 minutes.
Mm.
So I know I'm still totally fatigued, and I've been giving into that for the last few weeks. I've been trying to do. I went outside one time to do a little work, and I thought I was going to fall on the ground because it was so bad.
Wow.
Yeah.
You
So
know.
I haven't done that, obviously. I've been just watching myself, staying up for a little while, and then go lay down and rest for a little bit. And I taking a couple of naps because then you get so fatigued I do nap. But that part is not a problem to me. You know, I can work around that. But
Right.
I need to see if I'm going to ever get back my ability to, to do regular functions as opposed
Hmm.
to being not confined to the bed, but almost confined to the bed. You know,
Hmm.
ambulatory, but only for minimal amount of activity.
Hmm.
All right, go ahead. What else you got?
Yeah. So I mean, no one hopes to catch coronavirus, but based on all of the science and the evidence that I've read, it seems as though although Omicron is more transmissible than the Delta uh,
Uh,
virus, um, the symptoms seem to be less severe.
right.
So, fortunately, it's Omicron, although you weren't officially diagnosed with the Omicron variety. But given that the large percentage of cases have been taken over from Delta
Right.
to Omicron, I think that's a blessing. Uh,
Yeah, because what I hear, the hospitalization, even though the hospitalizations have jumped up, but because the numbers are so staggering, we've
yeah,
had things like one day I think 31,000 in a day, 9,000, 12. Before the 1,000 was the largest we ever went to with Delta last year.
yeah,
So this is
yeah,
a staggering number. So the cases number load is huge, but the hospitalizations, even though it's like
right.
1,200 now, that's still not the worst case scenario. And the big thing is that the other one actually attacked your lungs and your lower part, and that's why people had to be put on respirators because they had. So this is one thing I've never had breathing problems. I was able to breathe at nighttime, so
Mm-hmm.
that's why I know I had mild symptoms
Yeah,
because I never had. I mean, sometimes my nose would be congested and I have to rub it Vicks Ray, but something like that just to close it up. But it never was. Short breaths like that, and those are the things that these people suffer who really have it a serious condition. So I
yeah,
know I was blessed with that, and
yeah.
that's
The
a
good thing
result
is
of the
that the
vaccination.
evidence suggests that it doesn't travel to the lungs, but it stays near
In the upper
the
upper
nasal
chest,
passages, the upper
yeah,
respiratory
exactly.
tract. Yeah, so that I guess that's another benefit of catching the Omicron versus the Delta.
Delta, yeah,
But I can recall, and I talked to you about this back in 2019 when my son he just took sick. He was 2 years old at the time. He just recently turned 4 at the end of December. And recently started school. He's excited about that.
of course, yeah.
But he had taken sick, and he was extremely sick. He had a fever for probably about 3 days. Just couldn't shake his fever. So I mean, extremely lethargic, and his tongue was they call it strawberry tongue, but it was extremely red and it looked just like a strawberry. So we took him to Ashna, and they ran tests, couldn't really find out what the problem was. He didn't have the flu or I guess any of those common viruses that kids suffer with. I think it was January of 2019, January 2019. He was about to be discharged, and I noticed that he had a swollen lymph node. And so we called the doctor back in because he was literally about to be discharged. And we told the doctor, hey, doc, look, his neck is swollen. And the doctor said, wow, I didn't see that. I said, that's a bit strange. But anyway, so we went on Google. And I don't recommend that people go on Google to try to diagnose themselves. But we came across something called Kawasaki disease. And it was something that I never heard of. And I guess the joke for me was, hey, my son doesn't ride motorbikes. So the doctor, he came back and we said, hey, we think my son has Kawasaki disease. Mind you, before that, had never heard of that. So doctor left out for about 20 minutes and came back and said, well, how did you know it was Kawasaki? I said, what I wanted to say was, well, doc, you should have told us that. But I just think that it was just the grace of God that led us to Kawasaki. Because again, I told you, I had never heard of it. And so my son actually stayed for probably another 3 days. They gave him something that's in the family of the monoclonal. It's called immunoglobulin. Immunoglobulin. And it's an antibody. And within hours, my son started feeling better. And so it helped tremendously. And so later on down the line, and by the way, he had just gotten his vaccination shot, and we went to not the zoo, but there's some kind of water area in Audubon. I forget the name, Zoo or something like that.
Water park or something.
Yeah. So
Lazy
take a
water.
sip right after that. Yeah. So well, needless to say, he got better after receiving that immunoglobulin treatment. And as the months progressed, I began hearing stories about kids contracting Kawasaki in New York. And this was after coronavirus had become known throughout the medical community. And so I said, wow, that's interesting because I recalled when my son was diagnosed with Kawasaki. And so what the physicians were saying is Kawasaki was, I guess, a symptom of, or the after effect of being exposed to coronavirus. Now, mind you, my experience was in 2019, but I guess in the recent history of what happened in New York with thousands of kids being diagnosed with Kawasaki, they linked that to coronavirus. And so I said to myself, well, that's very interesting because this was in 20. My son was diagnosed in 2019. So I did a little research, and a lot of people don't know that there was a flu study in 2019 in Washington, the state of Washington. And there was a doctor who was just doing a flu study. And sometime after that, in 2020, she decided to go back and test the samples that she had taken from her patients for flu purposes. And apparently, whatever test that they run for the flu, it was a similar test that could also be utilized to determine whether a person has coronavirus. And so while testing these samples that she studied for flu purposes, she realized that a bunch of them were coming back with hits for coronavirus. And this was in 2019. So coronavirus has been floating around for quite some time. But I'll tell you, Bob, I'm glad that you got the help that you needed, because although this is a highly transmissible uh, disease and has less severe symptoms than Delta, um, it's still a pretty serious disease. So thank goodness you got the help that you needed. And I'll tell you, what I envision is within the next day or so, you're going to experience yourself getting better because of that monoclonal infusion. And of course, that coupled with the idea that, these viruses tend to run its course naturally. I think those two things working together, you'll soon get back on your feet. Let's just hope and pray that.
Well, I appreciate those wishes, and I hope so even more so than you do. And we won't waste your time next week with the whole story. But if there's anything positive to report or negative, I guess we will certainly just make a mention of that before we go back to our regular topics. Um, Anything else you have from that? Because we're almost running out of time. I wasted a lot of time, I guess. But
Well, no, I wouldn't say you wasted a lot of time because you helped me out, and ultimately you're going to help your viewers who may have never heard of this
yeah, yeah.
this infusion.
Yeah. Well, I had heard, but not details, and I certainly didn't think it was going to be available to me locally in that quick a moment. I was
Hmm.
thinking, oh, well, get in line, be a couple of months before you get it. But that's how important it is and how proud they are, supposedly, of their success rate that they're doing just hordes of people, you
Hmm.
know.
Hmm.
So, again, I know there's some requirements, but if you meet those, if you're unfortunate enough to contract the disease, whether you've been vaccinated or not, well, I'm hoping if you've not been vaccinated, I'm hoping that doesn't exclude you, but certainly give it a call your PCP or send them a message if you're with the Oxygen system or the way you do it to see if, you're having the symptoms or you've been certainly been tested and shown positivity to see if you can get into this program because for an hour and a half, it's worth the inconvenience if you're going to see results. Even if you're not cured, but if you can see positive results, especially if you've been dragging on like me with 3 weeks, of uncomfortableness, if nothing else. And if I can get some resolution to that, that's going to be a major plus in my corner.
And now,
All right.
Bob, you said that the location of the facility is at Ochsner's
Yes.
Immunotherapy.
Another no, it's not. It's on in the main campus. In other words, they don't have satellite branches like I usually use Baptist for most of my doctors with Ochsner because it's only 7 blocks from me. But it's in the if you have your back on Jefferson Highway, and because Ochsner occupies two sides of the road now, but the original campus is on the river side of Jefferson Highway. It's a big, big building and it's not in that building. But if you go around, there's a cul-de-sac. You enter over at the right end of it, which is the emergency room. Then you go through the hospital, the clinic, and as you're coming off of the curve, go back to the highway. Is the Brent House, which is like a 4-story, 8-story
Yeah.
building. In that building, you'll see that they put much better signage. She said people were passing EUA, whatever, and I still haven't found out what that stands for, but immunotherapy, EUA department. So that's what you need to look for. And there's what's good about it is that you or your loved one can park. You got to see that you got to be before you go there. Right at there are 7 or 8 um, um, parking spaces for either emergency room. Not, I forgot what, but also for the EUA. So we were able to stay there the whole time, or then would leave and go get stuff and come back. So that's what's good. The parking there is not having to go park and walk for blocks and blocks and blocks. You only have a half a block to walk from the parking spot to the building. So it's convenient.
And so just to recap,
Uh,
you were diagnosed with coronavirus,
right. Took the
and
PCR test on Sunday. The results came on Tuesday morning. I was fortunate enough to get a call from these people within an hour, hour and a half of getting it. And because my PCP was aware and already recommended me because of getting the positivity diagnosis, set me up, and they set me up for, like I said, like an hour and a half later. So that was what's good about it. But they're going to ask you some things to find out, but you have to be diagnosed. You can't go without a diagnosis.
And so I guess the lesson in that is if you are diagnosed, quickly contact your primary care physician.
That's why we're trying to give the information there. Don't,
Yeah,
because you might not know to contact your doctor, or you
right,
might not know,
right,
you might just wallow in depression, or oh my God, my life's what am I going to do? Everybody's going to hate.
right.
Put that in the back of your mind for a second and call your PCP to make sure he or she gives you a recommendation and get in that place ASAP. That's it. So at least with this foreknowledge, you know what to do. You won't find out about it weeks later. I could have had that antibody theory, with almost the same day that I got the diagnosis. So that's the key. Take
Hmm.
that knowledge and work with it, run with it, as opposed to just passing on it or getting, go about your regular business.
Well,
All right,
Bob,
anything?
I'll tell you this: if nobody, if you don't pull anything from this story, I would just hope that people understand if you've been diagnosed with coronavirus, then contact your primary care physician ASAP and get a referral to Ashna's immunotherapy.
I mean, there might be other clinics. I don't know. It's just
Yeah,
I deal with Oscar for everything being in. So I don't know about the others, but these people
yeah,
were so efficient, and I told you my journey, and it was, you know, right spot on. It couldn't have been nicer. They couldn't have been more efficient. You don't see people hanging like the sewage bar. You don't see and one of them's working and everybody's hanging. Every one of these people are busy little beavers, constantly doing two or three things at a time. So that's how important it is to them. So, all
awesome.
right. Well, we're going to call Ren over a little bit. Again, we apologize for some of the technology in the beginning and not having our thing, and hopefully you weren't. This is finding. We've had some viewers, so that's good. Hopefully that they will take note or spread the word. Please tell others
Yeah.
that might know about it or might not know about it. Excuse me, so they can educate. Meanwhile, we're hoping to see you back to our regular time on Thursdays. This was a special deal because tomorrow is 12th night uh, at 7 o'clock here, and we will send out our usual reminder post near the end of the week, so that way you'll know to look for it, and we'll hopefully set up what our topics are going to be between Derek and I. All right, Derek, tell him bye, and then we're going to say farewell.
All right. Good night, old Bob. I wish you a speedy recovery.
Thank
Until
you so
next
much,
time.
son. Thank you for being the well spirit that you are with our community as well as the well thoughts to me. I appreciate it.
All right.
Okay, folks, that's it. See you next week.